Why, hello there. Welcome to another episode of the Star Wars Minute. It's your daily podcast where we analyze, we scrutinize, and we celebrate solo a Star Wars story, one combative minute at a time. I'm Alex Robinson from alexrobinson.fun.
I'm Pete the Retailer from PeteTheRetailer.com.
And I'm Chrysanthe Tan from ChrysantheTan.com and Star Wars Music Minute.
Closing
where
out
we
the
do
week.
music stuff related to Star Wars. Oh, I'll also say I have a Patreon and a Discord server.
Mm-hmm.
So
We got to get a Discord
if I
server.
remember, I will remember to plug that today when this comes out.
Well, thanks for closing out the week with us. We made it to Friday.
Hey, it's Friday.
Minute Friday starts off with Captain Mimban answering the $1 million question. Your name should be Han Solo.
Hey,
I
it's
get
Solo.
it. It ends a minute later
Give
with
that guy a movie
Corporal
deal.
Han Solo awestruck at the coolness of a silhouetted figure he sees killing a bunch of guys. So this is probably the biggest time jump we've had in a minute so far, where we did the
That's
span of
true.
2 years later. But before we do that, Chrysanthe, please bless us with the reading of the novelization for this minute.
Oh, yeah.
This is tough because there's going to be a lot to skip. So, okay. I'll start at the beginning of the sentence. Han, ... Solo. Approved. Proceed to transport ID-83 for the Naval Academy at Karita. Solo. It would do as well as any other name. Better, maybe, as it described him pretty well. He looked back at the gate one last time, at Corellia and his old life. He turned his back on it and headed through the turnstile and down the tunnel to the shuttle that would get him, finally, off this planet. Good luck, Han Solo, the officer said as he departed. We'll have you flying in no time. And then there's like this scene that is giving Han Solo a demerit and stuff.
I was going to talk about that.
Oh, so this must be a deleted scene, I'm guessing.
Mm-hmm.
Pete, you want to jump in with the deleted scene?
Well,
Yeah,
I don't have it here. If you want to, I mean.
Oh.
Is it available to watch? Is it an extra?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I just haven't done that.
It's
filmed.
Filmed and it's one of those things where like they didn't really do the effects. It's like previs effects, but then the live action is filmed.
Is there music?
And I don't know.
Okay.
Is this Han Solo in the TIE Fighter?
Yes.
Okay.
And Sergeant Triosa Brogue, basically, they're saying, it's his flight record, sir. He's useless at everything, except that when we get him in a ship, he's, well, I've never seen anyone with his reaction time or innovative problem-solving skills.
He must have Jedi reflexes.
Oh, no. Start that.
Captain Wayne looked at the file again. You say innovative problem-solving skills, but here you wrote down reckless and responsible for 1, possibly 2 destroyed fighters. How can one possibly wreck a fighter? Blah, blah, blah. Basically, other recruits want to follow his tricks. Basically, they're complimenting, but also saying there's a good news and bad news. The good news is he's kind of Han Solo-ish. He's like reckless, but is like good at stuff. But on the bad side, he's reckless, but is good at stuff. And other people are also trying to copy him. So, then the Empire had no room for rebels, after all, is how that section ends. So,
yeah, it's different than the filmed one has. It just cuts straight from. I'm assuming that the final line of Captain Mimban was not originally in there because it cuts. I'm assuming it would cut from him being signed up, him saying he wants to be a pilot, then cut to Han in, and we see it's an odd, these kind of. We've seen it a little bit with I think the clone trooper helmets that have the little face cut out, and it's a similar kind of thing where it's a TIE fighter pilot, but with the face cut out. So you can see that it's him, which I don't like that. I think just have him, you can give us some kind of other visual cue there, but I don't like, we're just going to take the thing that but we're going to cut the face out so you can see that it's the movie star. You know what I mean? But,
is that what they did?
Yeah, basically. So it cuts to him kind of in a TIE fighter, piloting a TIE fighter, and it's he's kind of coming in, damaged and barely limping along at high speed, if that makes sense. And kind of crashes it into the hangar. And then from there, it goes to a tribunal where he's being berated by Commodore Almudin. Commodore Almudin.
On the
Commodore not
Almudin.
appearing in this film. And they basically take him to task. They're like, "Hey, you're dangerous," and he's like, "But I saved, so and so, like Onyx One or whatever the other." And says something about, "Oh, you're either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid," and he was like, "Honestly, I think it's a little bit of both." And then they say, "All right, well, you're busted down to, we're revoking your status and you have to go serve in the infantry." And he's like, "For how long? Like, when can I fly again?" And then that scene ends with him saying like, "Oh, don't worry, you'll be flying real soon," or something like that.
Huh.
Then cut to the exact same, like in the cutscene that you can watch, it shows you where that goes, and then that leads into Han Solo flying through the air,
Yeah.
on Mimban.
So that's like a few pages. Like they cut out a lot.
Yeah.
What definitely cut out a lot, because here they're saying the Wayne and Brugge are saying like, let's demote him or take away his flight privileges for a week. If he improves, reinstate him. If not, send him to a place we can use a reckless soldier who doesn't follow orders. And then there's another scene, which is what you said, where they're like, but Onyx, blah blah blah, talking about Onyx, and Han actually liked Onyx too, blah blah blah, whatever. 2 pages about Onyx, two pages about Onyx,
So, yeah.
and then there's another
It
scene
did
about
it.
Commodore Almudin,
Mm.
and some tribunal. Cadet Solo, are you brave or stupid? I'm a little of both. That's another page and a half.
Yeah.
So all that cut.
And from what again, so let's go to the Kazdan. According to that was another thing that was kind of in there early on that they really wanted to include for a long time. They were, thank you. They were really fighting to keep that Han in the academy and training as a pilot, and they really wanted that to be in there. But then eventually they were like, all right, I guess it is. They say ultimately it was always a hindrance to the flow of the story, which consistently felt like it didn't really take off until Chewie arrived in the movie. And I don't know. I kind of depends on what you mean by the story, but interestingly, so this happens, I guess, at Kurita, which is the Imperial Academy at Kurita, Imperial Naval Academy at Kurita. And so in this scene with the hearing with the tribunal, apparently we also at that point would have seen Tag and Bink from the comic book Tag and Bink Are Dead, which was a
How would we have known? Would they have said Tag Bink?
I don't know. It
Is this a
says
Move
Star
that
Wars
MacGuffin
comic?
to the third act.
Yeah, essentially. Yeah, it is. It was a good. It's kind of like a Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, hence the title. Where there's these two guys who I think it starts out as they're stormtroopers or they're rebels in the very beginning of Star Wars, and then they basically kind of bumble their way through all the movies. That they're always guys in the background, basically throughout the whole thing. Like they're like, oh, let's get out of here. Let's put on these stormtrooper outfits, and then they become,
Okay.
then.
There are like Easter eggs in various media.
Kind of. I mean, it's like in this one comic, they basically tied together a bunch of background characters and said they were the same guys, and it was done for comedy.
Oh.
And
Okay.
and so then as a nod to that, they were going to throw them in here. But they eventually that whole scene got cut. So
What do you think of them cutting out the training?
I can go back and forth. I can see they wanted to just get to, because they have more of the story later, that the sooner we can get him to essentially the rest of that story, I get it, but also like, what it would have added, a couple of minutes. And I think I don't know. I think it would have been good. Just to see Han Solo in a TIE fighter would have been worth it, I think. But again,
I think
not with his face cut out. That bothers me. So I'm glad the face cut out part is not in there.
I would have loved to see. I would have loved if this whole movie was Han training or something. I think I'm very cautious about saying I think I want this to happen in Star Wars because sometimes it does happen, and I'm like,
Right.
oh, I
Yeah.
don't know if
Yeah.
maybe I should be careful more. So
Usually when they give us what we want, we're disappointed. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
always good to throw us curveballs.
So I am interested in knowing more about training. That's my bias with Star Wars, is I'm always interested in the training process of whatever, Jedi or other stuff. I think when it comes to whether something will take too much away from the story or we got to keep the flow of the story along, like you said, Pete, I think it depends on how you're defining story,
Right.
because a lot of the time, so when people talk about story, they're talking about plot, specific types of plot events. And that's how, like, when shows come out, some people will say like, oh, this episode's filler or whatever. I mean, I do think that people have different orientations in terms of like storytelling, what kinds of storytelling people like. So I think a lot of people would agree. I'm the type of person who doesn't really care about events in events in an obstacle course, like moving on to the next event. I would prefer to linger in a place and get more emotionally on board get more invested in something, because that taking the time to, like, if I'm on board, if I'm emotionally on board, which is not easy to do, then you can throw almost it's like immunity almost to plot holes. It's immunity to like other things. But if I'm not on board and you're throwing me and I feel thrown from one event to another, and I'm not sold emotionally, then my brain is just doing overtime trying to put this together, trying to justify everything as we go along, trying to be like, okay, no, it's okay. Like there's this whole other like noise in my head going on that's like more of trying to understand it from a logical perspective. But I think that's why I struggle with this film. It's not, I don't think it's bad. I don't even know what that means. It's just that since it didn't grip me, I can't even consider it in the same way that I view other films, because it's not just check boxes of like, it did this well, it did this well, it did this well. Oh, if it didn't get me on board emotionally, then I will not be able to look at this from the same lens at all. And so the whole film is just going to be tainted by that. Like, people always say this film may not be their favorite Star Wars, but it's fun, they enjoy it. I don't even think this is fun to watch. I don't like I enjoy it in the way that, like, because I care about Star Wars and the history of Star Wars and the world of Star Wars, I will do it just like I have, just, be a good citizen, take my history class. Like, that's the nature that I watch this movie. I don't have fun watching it. And that's, but I'm also not someone who watches heist movies for fun. I don't think those movies are fun at all. And so I think if it were in a genre that, like Encanto, okay, that's a movie that I didn't think was earth-shatteringly brilliant, but I had fun watching it because I think I'm maybe more well-versed in that genre, or I was able to like appreciate certain things about it. But because I don't have like that to fall back on with this genre, it just, if it doesn't work, I'm not like, at least I'll enjoy a fun heist movie, because I don't like heist movies
Right.
in general, or war movies for that matter. So that's, yeah, don't know how we got on that subject, but I would have liked to see the training, and it could have tied in more with like some of the novels too. If Disney's always trying to tie stuff in, like I never really cared about Imperial training until the novel Lost Stars by Claudia Gray. That follows Imperial officers in training, and like that, the work that some of the people in the novels are doing. I don't know. This could have been like, could have seen a little bit more of that world. Instead, all we have still with regard to the Empire in film is caricatures of what we think the Empire is, and go straight to battle, skipping all of that. I don't know. Just my thoughts.
I almost feel like if there was a we've brought up the idea, in addition to this being a musical, we've also brought up the idea of this being a television like series.
Right.
So I almost feel like if they had gone that route, I definitely feel like they could have done like an episode about him training and meeting other recruits and so on like that. It could have had all sorts of opportunities for crossovers and things like that. Oh look, it's young Wedge here in the academy with me or whatever. But I'm not saying I want to see that, but
No. The Young Wedge adventures.
I guess in the
His
context
training
of
would have impacted him for sure.
right,
Yeah.
yeah. Or he could
He
have
would
met.
have new relationships.
What was his wife's name again? Stella Solo or something. From the they
Sanastaros?
yeah, that's right.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
big family.
Yes. Anyway,
Well, but now, if I can bring this up again, now we really do get the Imperial March. Now we're on Mimban.
Mimbam.
Mimban.
You
Big
go
band.
from Munbrin to Minbam.
Bim bam boom. Mimban.
Yeah, I do. I like the transition. I liked the musical transition there. I think, well, when Solo is getting his name,
Mhm.
he's getting anointed. We have his heroic theme kick in,
Mm.
which is like, what key? It's like,
Right.
and then, oops, oop. What am I doing? Okay, there it goes. Something like that. And then it swells and it goes straight into the with a little bit of like Night on Bald Mountain strings in the background. Do you know what I mean? Does that ring a bell?
Yeah.
So for those who don't know what Night on Bald Mountain is, it's a piece by Mussorgsky, and it's frequently played around Halloween Town. I think it's in Fantasia too. And
It's the precursor to Night on Disco Mountain.
it features like these chromatic violin. It features fast chromatic lines that are often used in Star Wars and other media. It's kind of like it's kind of like a trope of a type of musical thing to reference. I don't know. It's like, you know what I mean? Something like that. I
Right.
don't know. That's not exactly how it is in Night on Bald Mountain, but it is. It might be in Ride of the Valkyries too, but it's sort of like these fast chromatic like string violin stuff while brass blare out like some greater melody over
Mhm.
it. It really like think of like in Apocalypse Now type of thing too. I don't know. This is a very it's not uncommon to see that like in a war context. So here it follows in a long tradition of a long line of other things here. They're being shot at, they're like dodging in trenches, and we hear the Imperial March with the string chromatics in the background. Yeah, it all I can say is, yeah, it makes sense, it fits, it's not unexpected, it's
Right.
yeah.
Thematically appropriate.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Which is good. And I like this again, where it's back to dark. Everything's hard to see. It's like a reddish brown wash over everything now instead of a blue wash over everything. But it's still hard to see what's
Yeah.
going on.
We had a blue wash, we had a kind of grayish wash, and now we have like a sepia-ish wash.
Yeah, brown.
Yeah.
But it works with that. Like, so like the contrast between both the imagery and the music of the recruitment poster of just like, hey, be a part of something, join the Empire, yeah, and then cut to the contrast of the actuality of it with the Imperial March, which more is the kind of less hyperbolic one that we've heard before, and while he's literally in the mud here, it's a good it works. It works.
Yeah, it's like Instagram versus reality.
Yeah, there you go.
Type of thing.
Fight to the death.
It sounds happy and patriotic and like just join the school band or whatever. And then it's like, oh yeah, we didn't tell you it was actually
right.
See, it's kind of the same. It's kind of like what we told you, but
Join the
but
Empire, they
not.
said. Be a part of something, they said.
Yeah. Um, it's kind of hard. It reminds me a lot of like war movies. Like this feels very classic war movie, right? Like
hmm
um I tweeted about something about Solo feels very war movie to me in a way that others in a way even more than other Star Wars movies. Like it feels like it almost in a genre way. Like I think it is probably um paying homage to a lot of maybe World War II movies or Vietnam War movies, possibly, maybe in the shooting style. Like, I don't know. I don't know too
Yeah.
much about that.
I mean, with this scene specifically, once they got Mimban, they were specifically going for, they're kind of referencing, evocative of Paths of Glory, Stanley Kubrick movie,
Mm.
with Kirk Douglas, I think, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kirk Douglas?
Mm-hmm.
Um, which was it was a World War One movie, but still, they're going for that
Correct.
vibe of war. But again, the movie shifts around genres a little bit. Sometimes it's this, sometimes it's that. You know,
Yeah.
originally it was a
Originally
Dickensian tale a little while
yeah.
ago.
Opened as a musical about orphans,
Right.
and now it's a war
I'm
movie.
Solo.
Maybe are we progressing forward through? So like first it was like a kind of Victorian Edwardian kind of Dickens kind of a thing. Now we're at World War One. We're traveling through world/European history.
Maybe that's
forward in time.
maybe that's like the underlying premise. It's a subtext.
Well, I have some information about the planet Mimban.
Mimban.
Now, Pete, you mentioned that I don't know, someone along the production of this would look up stuff from Wikipedia specifically to include it. They'd be like, "We need the name of a planet that's like this," and then they would look it up, right?
That's how they got to. What was the name of the city where they just were? The port city. Well, I just forgot. Coronet City. Of course.
Coronet.
Karita?
Coronet City. They on Corellia. They were like, oh, they go to a port, and they didn't really have one in the script. Then they just went to. I don't know if they went specifically to Wikipedia or if they went to somebody. If they went to Pablo Hidalgo or somebody, they're like, hey, we need a port city on Corellia, and they're like, oh, Coronet City.
Well, the planet Mimban has been, this is not its first canonical appearance. It was apparently in an episode of the Clone Wars in which Rex and our old friend Jar Jar Binks had an adventure together on Mimban. So that was, of course, 22 BBY. That's 9 years before we see Han Solo here on Mimban. But it goes back even farther than that. Apparently, that was one of the names that George Lucas had in the original 1977 script. Mimban was going to be like a Dagobah type planet when that was the name that obviously was dropped before the movie was done. But then our old friend Alan Dean Foster included it in Splinter of the Mind's Eye, the first EU first ever book to expand on the Star Wars story. So
first expansion of the universe.
So it is the very old and ancient name, Mimban. There you go.
Interesting.
Mimban.
Okay.
Mimban. It is fun to say, as we know.
I don't know. Oh.
Go ahead. You have a question? Or is different? You want to change the subject?
I was gonna
talk about
say
different
something
movie?
about Solo, the name, but if we're still talking about Mimban, let's stay on this.
No, we can talk about Solo. I was going to change the subject, so go ahead.
Oh, okay. Why Solo must not be the only young person signing up for the military who's alone.
Mm-hmm.
So
low,
but they all have last names, presumably.
I find it hard to believe that this is that unique of a scenario.
I don't think that it is necessarily. That's why the guy didn't really question it much. He was just like, oh, I need to put in something.
So I wonder if there's a bunch of Solos running around the galaxy.
Oh, could be.
That were named that got their name from enlisting in the military on their own.
Yeah.
Without giving a family name.
Well, he seems to think about it for a second, which makes you think that
It's unusual.
This is
But
either it's
maybe-
unusual or he's trying to think of a name that he hasn't already given to 1,000 different
Ooh.
people.
Or he
So-
came up with it now, and then from here
Yeah.
on in, he just uses that for people that show up. So there could be, 4 other solos from Corellia that happened later. That's a good story. Let's mail that to the people doing the Star Wars books.
I bet when we finally do the from a certain point of view about Solo,
Mm.
I'm gonna write the story about Munbrin and how
Mhm.
later on he gets in trouble. They're like, you just gave everyone the name Solo and just let him in. That was it. You didn't have some it's paperwork to be done and stuff. And then he's just like,
What can you
oh,
do?
well.
Hey, speaking of Imperial officers, I got another one here for you.
Oh yeah, who's that?
Major Staz.
Staz.
Major Staz.
S-T-A-Z? Or two Zs?
S-T-A-Z. Staz. He's Han Solo's commanding officer here, and he says he's the one who's like, Solo, get up. And
He's another disembodied voice, right?
well, shortly he's absolutely disembodied. But I don't know. His mix is a little bit, maybe because there's so much more going on, it all creates like a thick layer of sound, so I don't notice it as
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
But he's the one shouting to Han Solo to kind of get up and keep moving, and then he gets blown up.
Staz.
Staz.
Yeah. So there's so much happening here. What's the last thing the Commodore says? He says, "Oh, we'll have you flying in no time."
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we cut to Han Solo literally flying through the air, and
Right.
the
So
way that
this
we
is how
did
it's
in the anime.
described. This is how it's described. Okay. As soon as Han landed, he understood the play on words the Commodore had used. Imperial mud troopers definitely did fly on Mimban. I can't continue. Usually after some sort of explosive device had launched them into the air, often in several pieces. They would land, splattering mud, and not get back up. Han flew now, again, luckily still in possession of his limbs. An explosive shock wave slammed into him, pushing him head over heels backward, the only thing saving him being the trench he stumbled into, face first, naturally. He looked up, eyes wide, spitting mud. Han still wasn't entirely sure what they were fighting for, or even if they were on the correct side. In theory, they were here to suppress a hostile uprising against the Emperor and bring the peace and prosperity that Imperial support always supplied. But near as he could tell, they were the hostiles that were invading an already peaceful planet. They were probably trying to take the planet for its resources, although Han couldn't guess what the Emperor needed with all this mud. He lay in the trench, panting, coated from head to foot in Mimban mud. It was inescapable. He smelled of rot, of blood. It wasn't clean mud. Someone was always getting a skin fungus from the stuff. He finally gathered his senses and sat up, pulling off his partially demolished, mud-covered face guard and goggles. Visibility wasn't much better. The smoke and flame from the battle turned the already dense fog a dismal dark red, making the action just half a click away invisible. Click is spelled K-L-I-C-K, by the way, so I don't actually know what that means. The enemy could... Thermometer?
That would be better. Half a thermometer away, isn't it? But kilometer is usually, often click is a shorthand for kilometer.
Oh. The enemy could and did appear out of the fog, attack them, and then slip back into it. Han had no idea how he'd stayed alive so long. He had seen countless fellow soldiers die on the battlefield. The casualty reports were updated so often that he couldn't even follow. More troop transports arrived every week, more blood for the fields. Still, the Mimbanese and their trenches held off the Imperials. Han figured the dead were the only ones who won this nightmare battle, because at least they could stop fighting. However, dying was not the way he wanted to win anything. Major Staz gave him a nod. Han had seen the nod before. It meant, glad you're not dead, rookie. Now get back in here. Your empire needs you. Troopers forward, he shouted. Solo, get up. We're almost there. And so that's what we get in the movie. Hadn't he just seen the explosion that sent Han back to the trench? Almost where, he said. Where are we going? The major heaved himself out of the trench and ran forward, calling over his shoulder and pointing just over that last ridge. Victory is... Blank. Han ducked as another explosion sounded, dodging the shrapnel. The major hadn't been as lucky as Han had just been, and this one was a direct hit. The man flew into bits. Just as Han had seen happen time and time again. Han ducked back into the trench panting, still reeling from the first bomb. He felt stunned and confused. He'd lost superiors before and knew quite well that this didn't mean you got to ignore your orders, even though common sense just said you shouldn't head into the place where someone else had just been vaporized.
I want to write a novelization of
You
a
should.
You should.
You should write a spec novelization. Just go back to find a movie that you like that doesn't have a novelization and write the novelization of that.
Oh, like The Black Hole.
That has a novelization.
Oh.
I've read it. It's good.
Anyway, I'll think of one.
War
Okay.
is not fun.
No.
It seems like it would be an interesting set of challenges because you kind of have to. You're limited by what you can do, but I
Right.
don't know. I
Yeah.
think it would be an interesting exercise.
But you can add so much
Yeah.
where the
Yeah.
movie wasn't maybe doing
Yep.
doing it.
You did a book that was an adaptation of a story,
Yes,
So-
that's true.
which was the what was it called? Something Santa Claus?
A kidnapped Santa Claus.
Kidnapped Santa Claus. I'm like, it's not the lost Santa Claus.
What's
A
it based
kidnapped
on?
Santa Claus.
It was based on an L. Frank Baum short story.
Oh.
The guy who did The Wizard of Oz wrote other books, if you can
Mhm.
believe it, and so it was sort of a adaptation of that. So
Cool. Is it a graphic novel?
it is a graphic novel. Yeah, they approached me and said, "Hey, would you be interested in adapting?" I didn't pick it myself, so it is an interesting idea, though.
It's a good way to sell it. Like I didn't choose to do this.
Well, no, it's a very strange. It's a very strange short story. So
Did you enjoy doing it?
yeah, it was definitely not a story I ever would have like come up with on my own. So that was interesting. Kind of, it was more of a fantasy type thing with a lot of elves and wizards and stuff like that. So
Right.
Did you go super by the book, or did you add in some extra things?
no, I changed a lot of it. It was really
Really?
it was like basically written for a child who lived in that 1897. So to make it interesting for kids today, I felt like I had to include a lot more
Cool.
stuff in it. So
Hmm.
I mean the story's only like 15 pages or something, and I had to turn that into 60 pages or 80 pages or something. I don't remember. But anyway, we're here to talk about Solo, not my
Right.
not my
But yes, then at the end of this, we see the kind of the heroic silhouettes
mhm.
of who knows who. Looks like Star-Lord to me, kind of.
Someone with a southern drawl, perhaps.
I want to point out two things I learned from the Wikipedia. We did have the time jump mentioned. We go from 13 BBY to now we are 10 BBY.
Okay.
And I know what you're wondering. What was going on in the galaxy in 10 BBY?
Oh, sure.
Not a lot, because this is kind of an unexplored. This Imperial era is kind of not really. We don't have a lot of stories set during this time. But two things that were noted. It was in this year that Jabba the Hutt hired Black Chrysanthe to track down Obi-Wan Kenobi, who I guess
Yes,
Jabba
I
the Hutt
did.
thinks is alive or knows he's alive at that point. So I don't know if these are going to be it's kind of a preview of the adventures we're going to see on Tatooine. But also that year, a song was released, speaking of Star Wars music, called Vader's Many Prosthetic Parts.
Wait a minute. Have you discovered a novelty song within the Star Wars universe canon?
I didn't make the connection, but yes, apparently I have. It was a song released by a musical group entitled Hacko Draslip and the Tootle Fruits. They released a song called Vader's Many Prosthetic Parts, Hacko Draslip and the Tootle Fruits. And Vader was...
They must have lived on the outer... They're Tatooine based, right?
It does not say. It does not say where they
Let's
are
see.
based here.
I wouldn't want to be on Imperial territory and have that song.
Well, you know what? You're right, because they were caught,
You-
and where were they sent? To the spice mines of Kessel.
Oh my
Aw.
god.
Which means they could very well
Knew they
be
couldn't get away
there
with that.
when
No.
Han Solo is there later on. So we'll have to
We
keep
will
our
take
eye
a
out
look.
Oh my gosh.
We'll have to look for
Hopefully we
them.
get serenaded.
for Hacko Draslip and the Tootle Fruits. Are you looking this
Here's-
up?
I am. Apparently, this is all from Heir to the Jedi
Hmm.
by Kevin Hearn.
Oh, so it's Legends.
No, it's canon. It's
Heir
Heir
to
to
the
the
Jedi is
Jedi
canon.
is from 2015.
Oh,
Originally intended to be a Legends novel series. Oh,
wait, that
originally intended for the Legends novel series Star Wars Empire and Rebellion, but it was published as a standalone story after the continuity relaunch.
I thought the first Star. Okay, interesting. I thought Master and Apprentice was the first canon novel.
I thought
Yeah, it wasn't the first. It came out after, but it was
Oh,
pushed. It was originally going to be another one that bridged the gap, but it
Yeah.
didn't come out first. Um,
well, I'm glad this song exists.
It's interesting to me because it implies that the galaxy as a whole knows that Vader has prosthetic
That's
parts.
true.
yeah. Not only do they
That's
know that he
true.
exists and who he is, but they know that he's.
So
Maybe the song was meant to be a joke, but they didn't realize how true it was.
oh my gosh, that must be I don't know, is it Anakin's? Does he care if people know he has prosthetic parts? I don't know what people's attitudes towards prosthetics other than the mods. I don't know
Well,
what
I don't think he wants anyone really knowing much about his suit situation.
so that must have
and
been
his-
very upsetting.
Maybe.
Perhaps.
I mean, certainly anything that could remotely tie him back to Anakin.
Yeah.
Right.
Wouldn't want.
Do you think he's like, well, what do I do? I don't want to Barbara Streisand it and tell them to take, because then the more I call attention to it, it's just going to have more people wanting to listen to it.
No, I
So-
think he just kills them.
But
I think he just
but
wants
the
to kill them.
song, I mean, does he?
Uh,
It's out
Probably.
there anyway.
I think his people make sure he doesn't hear it.
Totally like distracted. I can spend a lot of time here in the Wikipedia category page for songs.
I have
'cause
something to say about
there's
Han
so
Solo.
many.
Han Solo. Oh, right, from this
So,
movie.
The fact that he has like this movie this movie is meant to show us how Han Solo we got to where he is in many ways. We see a lot of these transition points. We see a lot of formative
Mhm.
moments, getting the Falcon, getting Chewie, like these things get checked, all these boxes get checked off. And I guess maybe we're supposed to be like, oh, that's how we got Chewie. Oh, that's how we got the nickname. That's how we got the Falcon. But I feel like the fact that he has seen like this kind of war, like he's like that's a big deal, right? Like isn't it seems like a big deal. Like he's been in this kind of war fight, like he's been in infantry, like
Yeah.
I just feel like that's glossed over. I feel like it's I don't know. I feel like it's maybe a little bit glossed over, or like I'm not sure I'm not sure how to like rectify what's going on here with the Han Solo that I don't want to say no, but like
Right.
I feel like I would have maybe wanted again, I don't know if I actually want this, but I don't know. Just something about maybe something about like making such a big deal of introducing Chewie and Solo and the Falcon and all that. Maybe that is just clouding my judgment here, where it's like I don't think I needed to see that, but damn, I just realized he has been in infantry. Like my brother was in the army. Like something like that, something like this, being shot out at like seeing people being blown up in front of you, like more so than flying around in a starship. That's all, of course, its own thing too. But like this Mimban stuff is really gruesome. Like
Yeah.
this is like really in your face. Like Han went through that. Damn.
Yeah. Which is also why, I think that plays into why he's hesitant to get involved, and he's, no Imperial entanglements, all that stuff that, like.
Why he can't maintain an adult relationship.
Well, that too. Yeah. While he's always kind of on the run.
Well, it's interesting because Star Wars always has kind of a weird, like, like if you look at it, incredibly traumatic things happen to all the characters in Star Wars. Princess Leia's whole family, her whole planet is blown up. Luke gets his hand cut off by his father. Luke sees his aunt and uncle, who are basically his parents. He sees their corpses laying there on fire at the but you kind of almost have to just be like, okay, and then they just move past it for the sake of the story. Like you could totally do a story about the trauma of witnessing horrible things in a war. But like then you can't also make it a lighthearted story about him wisecracking his way across the galaxy and so on. So
Right.
That's a fair point. I will also say that I think the music impacts how we take these scenes, though, because
right.
a lot of the times, like if we think of the original trilogy, when something big happens, like I don't know, Obi-Wan gets killed, or like even Luke sees his aunt and uncle burning at the homestead, the music sort of takes us. It doesn't play this really scary Imperial march with with Night on Bald Mountain. Like this is like the most gloomy. This is the most like doom-ridden music you could play for this
Mm-hmm.
type of war type of scene. And in those other scenes, it's sort of like we see something really, really awful, but we have this like underscore that takes us to a more, that kind of pulls us out of the moment enough to make us not too uncomfortable. You know, it kind of takes us back to this mythic place.
Yeah.
You know, like it brings up the Force theme when he's looking at his aunt and uncle burn, and it swells and everything. And when Obi-Wan dies, like Leia's theme kicks in, and it's like still frenetic and everything, but it has this like different, I can't put my finger around what exactly it is, but the music feels less on the nose. Tragedy, doom, gloomy. It's more like, okay, we'll lift you up. Like it kind of,
There's a certain majesty to it.
do you know what I mean? Like it kind of, we see horrible things, and then the music kind of helps us, reminds us that like it's going to be okay, or like
Or
I don't know.
It's
It
almost
takes
like
care of us.
operatic, where it's so like almost like making it less real. It's more like
Yeah, it takes us back to the fantasy.
yeah, like it's
Right.
whereas the combat scenes here are very like realistic combat scenes, and like you said, the music is very scary and realistic too. It's not, I don't know.
It's the music not in this, but in like other tragic things that we see in Star Wars. The music, I feel like it immediately gets us to step outside and take it in poetically.
Mm-hmm.
And here it's like so much realism, you know, in movie terms, it's like
Right.
more realistic.
Yeah.
And the music is also more realistic with like, no, this sucks. There's not going to be some like nice, there's not going to be some hopeful or some like mythical, we're just getting this really grim thing here. It's gritty. It is gritty. And not in the Robert Rodriguez Book of Boba gritty way. This is gritty.
Put the war in Star Wars.
Yeah.
This, yeah,
As
really
advertised.
does. Yeah.
Well, anyone else have anything else for minute number 15 they want to get off their chest? Or Chrysanthe, anything you want to get off your chest about Solo in general? Any other characters you wish you'd gotten to comment on, or things you're glad you didn't have to comment on?
Well, I am going to make a comment about L3,
Okay.
and that is, I am not a fan of the L3 stuff in this movie. C-3PO is still my favorite droid,
Mm-hmm.
and I think the 9 what's it called, episode films, I think the droids there are droids that I like more, and the droids in Solo and Rogue One are droids that I am not as fond of in Star Wars. They feel so human and funny to me in a way that is like the droids in the other films, BB-8, even R2, C-3PO, any of the other ones, they feel like they are funny. It's not that they're not funny. They're funny, they're charming, they're unique. They have their own pluses and minuses and their own skills and functions and whatever. And sure, L3 and K2SO also have their own unique functions, but they're also just kind of funny. They're also just humans that are just like a little bit stronger and more powerful and in droid form and funny. They're like little comedians. And I think it takes it to a level that is, for me, I don't appreciate it. I think some other people appreciate it. For me, I don't like it. I don't like the droid rights stuff. I think it's very silly. And I think it's cringy. And I think it is, or not globally cringy, but like I cringe when I hear the droid rights stuff and see L3 being like such a caricature of like an activist for like droid rights. And I think in general, I have way too many thoughts about AI that I won't get into, but like in general, the like anthropomorphization, like the human and like the human centric design of some droids in Star Wars to be like these funny human whatever is kind of, for me, missing the point of like how unique these droids can be in a way that is not just that they can speak basic and that they're all funny and they're all have like a sassy personality and whatever. Like I think that's I don't like that too much, and I think it yeah so that's what I'll say about that. I'm pretty sure I'm in the minority on that opinion, but and also in the novelization, L3's inner dialogue is tragic. Like it's not okay. It's very upsetting. I find it very upsetting, the part where L3 dies, knowing like how they try to walk, like they haven't decided. I know I came on last year and talked about sentience. They can't, I feel like they can't decide, Star Wars collectively, how to treat droids and sentience still. Like they try to say that like try to make us feel like droids have sentience and that we should care about them and that they're doing good thing by like putting in droids' rights type of thing, but then in other ways, like just completely missing the point and then giving us these like mixed messages of like, but we can still treat droids like this. But then in the novelization, they give L3 this like dialogue, like she doesn't want to become one of the ship. Like she doesn't want to die. She doesn't like, it's so like tragic. If I'm to accept that droids are sentient and have like feelings and can feel pain and everything, then the way that L3 dies in the novelization is just so deeply upsetting to me. It's so upsetting and it's scary to me. It reminds me of that Black Mirror episode where they're all trapped on that like ship or whatever. So yeah. I'm kind of glad I don't have those minutes because listeners would be very annoyed with me.
Right.
But yeah,
Instead you get war.
Yeah.
So
what is it good for?
The last thing I swear is that I had a dream that I was on this podcast. And I was asking you if teeth count as rocks. And I don't know why that was coming up for me or if it was relevant, but
like Jedi teeth,
I guess like do our teeth count as rocks? Like they're kind of like minerals, right?
They have mineral qualities. I mean, they're made up of calcium, which is a
right.
Okay.
I would say
stuff.
when they're in your body they don't, but once they're out they do.
I like that. Okay.
Case closed.
I had one what not to I skipped over a note before when we were talking about the Commodore not appearing in this film. He was played by an actor named Ramon Tikaram. And Ramon Tikaram has been in a million things and was apparently, no, we don't know who, but he was offered a role in the prequel trilogy, but declined because he would have had to have cut his hair.
Hippie.
Now, I don't know. That's bold. Because like, yeah, hey, you want to be in Star Wars? Sure. You have to cut your hair. Oh no. Like that's an odd but yeah, it's also like interesting that he had like, I wonder if that was like a revenge, like, oh okay, like years later it's like, oh great, how about now you want to be in Star Wars, you don't have to cut your hair, or maybe he had, I don't know, it's hard to tell, and they're like, yeah sure, all right, like, thanks, no hard feelings, all right, and then they cut his scene, to like, is that
If the fact that Solo was cooked up as a revenge scheme would totally make sense to me.
That's great.
And I'm trying to see let's see, he was born in 1967. So he would have been, in
Ring
his
theory.
30s for the prequel era. So I don't know what
Who was he going to play?
I don't know. That's what I'm somebody, if it was somebody that he would have had to have cut his hair, means he would probably not just a background Jedi, I don't think, because they would have
Mace Windu.
Yeah, I mean it could have would he I'm looking at his I don't know, do they think it could have easily was he a first choice for Jango Fett, or was he a could he have been? I'm trying to think of other characters that he might have been, or would he have had to cut his hair to fit into a prosthetic, alien suit or something like that?
I think Tarfer is who he was supposed to play.
Yeah, when they need that's like the poor Kid Fisto guy, where they're like, "You look like an alien with your dreadlocks. Go! You're gonna be in this movie. Go to makeup." And they're like, "Great, we're gonna have to shave your head in order to put the dreadlocks on." Okay. But yeah, I don't know. We'll have to do some more research to see. He was also in Game of Thrones, and also he's been on EastEnders and Jupiter Ascending, which is... Anyway, that's all I got now. I just wanted to... That was a note that I had skipped that we were going to talk about.
Well, it sounds like we're all wrapped up with minute number 15, and we all wrapped up with Chrysanthe Tan. Thank you for joining us here all week. People should, of course, check out your Star Wars Music Minute podcast.
And today, if I at least looked at the calendar correctly, if today is March 11th, then it is my birthday, and Star Wars Music Minute episode comes out about this same set of minutes.
Wow! All right,
15. Yeah,
well, that's great.
Really
Happy
cool guest.
Birthday.
So people should jump on the social media and wish you happiest of birthdays today.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been talking to Chrysanthe all week, but you know what we really missed?
What?
You, dear listeners.
Me?
We want you to interact with us and be a voice on the show. So call our number, 8-Day Greedo. Just pick up the telephone. Call 8-Day Greedo, and you can leave a voicemail there. Tell us what you think about L7. L3? Is that what the L3
or
is?
L7.
L337.
L7, L3.
Oh, yeah.
I saw L7 in...
El Camino, any of them. Give us a call. Let us know what you think about L3.
Leet.
Or Dryden Voss, or Empty Nest, or any of the characters that are coming up in the movie. So go do that, and then come back here on Monday, because you know what? We got another brand new Star Wars Minute.
Star Wars Minute.
Bye.